This is a production of Gordon College's Scott Radio.
Scott Radio.
Hey everybody, it's Ben Schneider back again for another episode of The Ben Schneider Show. We have one of the highest profile guests we've had on the show all year. My guest today is Ed Burgess, and Ed is the fastest man in Gordon men's cross-country history. He's a school record holder in the 8K and the 10K, and he's still active in the running community. He currently coaches at Londonderry High School. So, Ed, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is fun.
It's an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
How was the drive over?
It wasn't bad. A little bit of traffic on 95, but clear sailing through New Hampshire, so not bad.
That sounds good. Well, Ed, normally on this show I'd like to start just getting to know you a little bit better throughout the early years and what led you to Gordon. So if you could, I know you said your dad was a professor here, but just kind of tell the story of how you got started in running and what brought you here to Gordon College.
All right, sounds good. So when I was born, my dad was a pastor, so he was a pastor at a congregational church in Pigeon Cove, and then he decided to get into education, so he went to Trinity for a couple of years, and then when I was in third grade, he came to Gordon, so that was my connection to Gordon. And as a little kid, I always wanted to play soccer because we'd come over here and watch all the soccer games, so my goal was to become a soccer player for the Gordon College Scots. And then in fifth grade, we had a race, and I did terrible. My dad told me later, he goes, "You'll never be a runner." But I had a couple friends who started running. We had a junior high at Beverly, and I started running with them. And one of them was really fast, so he took the 400. One of them was really good in distance, so he took the mile. So I got stuck in the 800. And I ended up setting the school record for the junior high in the 800, and I never ran anything else. It was just the 800 all the time. Although I do remember the first time I ran a mile, running 4 times around a track and having people look at me. I said, why would anyone ever want to do this? Have people watch you for 4 laps? But I came in third place and got a point. That was in 7th grade, so I really liked it. So that's kind of what got me started. And then when I got in middle school, I really wanted to join the soccer team, but we didn't have one. So when we got to high school, they had just started a soccer team, but I was already into the running, and I was about second on the team. So it was really hard to break and go back to soccer. So I ended up staying, and Beverly had a very good track program, very good cross-country program. My junior year, we were second in the state, second in the East, and then we were second in the state. We beat the team that had beat us in the East. And our number one runner was 13th in the year, or 13th that year in the race. So we figured we had 5 seniors returning. We figured that was going to be our good year. But he ended up getting rheumatoid arthritis. So his senior year, he was in a wheelchair. So we would carry him up and down the stairs at Beverly High School. And our team that year just wasn't very good. We ended up making it to the regional meet, and I was running great. But my coach never told me. I was in 7th place, and a kid passed me, and the coach told him, there's 6 of them up ahead of you. You got to get going. And what I thought he meant was there was 6 from the team they were trying to beat ahead of him. So I said, I'm running terrible, and my team's running terrible because they're all behind me, and I was supposed to be second or third on the team that day. So the last half mile, I kind of just slowed down. And at the end, after it was all over, the coach told me how well I was running. I said, if you had told me then I would have known, and that probably would have helped me out a little bit more. But that kind of set me up knowing that I could run a lot better than what I had been running. And Gordon College was a no-brainer. My dad was here as a professor, so it was free tuition. The only drawback was that we didn't have track back then, and I really liked running on the track. Any season I was in, that was my favorite season. So cross-country when it was cross-country, indoor when it was indoor, and spring when it was spring. So I almost thought of going to another school just so I could do the track. But looking at the money and all that, I said, no, I got to go to Gordon. And I came over with my best friend from high school, Dante Rutstrom. He was going to be a runner too. I remember the first day coming over as freshmen, and we'd pull into Gordon, and we're like, what are we doing here? We shouldn't be here. Let's go home. But we stayed. He was on the cross-country team with me, too. And that first year, there were a couple good seniors, so it was a lot of fun. And I started doing very well. So Some of my favorite runs were running through the woods out behind and out to the beaches and things like that. So it was just a lot of fun. I enjoyed that first year.
I know you've been back a few times. You were telling me before we came on, this is your first time in a while, though.
Yeah.
But what did the campus look like back then compared to, I imagine it was quite a bit different.
Yeah, the library was probably half
recent.
the size of what it is now. We didn't have the science building. The science building was, I don't know what they call it now, but the building right next to our library, that was where we had the science.
McDonald or Emory?
Yeah, Emory. Emory was what
Okay.
it was called, Emory Science, yeah. Yeah, so all the sciences were in there. Education was in Frost Hall. My dad's office was in Frost Hall. Because actually where the science building is now, that was part of the cross-country course. We ran right down through there. Prince Chapel is there, which is gone now. Prince Chapel is probably about where the science building is, too. I got married at Prince Chapel. Lots of people got married there. There was actually a bell. I don't know if the bell's still here that you're supposed to ring
outside
if you... Yeah.
AJ Chapel now?
Okay,
yeah.
It used to be outside of Prince Chapel, and that was what everyone rang when they get engaged. That was what they're supposed to... the course went around Koi Pond. Does it still go out back of Koi Pond, or...?
A little bit. We go out mostly in the woods now.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a section there that loops around the beginning of it.
So, because we started right in front of the student union, we ran down where the science building is now, and then out around Gull Pond, and then to Koi Pond, did a little loop behind Koi Pond, and then came out, ran throughout the whole campus. So we ran all the way over to the back entrance, came back down, then ran around the buildings in front and finished at the flagpole. So that was our course.
Yeah, the 5K course still uses Gull, but 8K course we just kind of cut past it, a little bit of Koi, and then it's mostly in the woods now.
Okay. That'd be nice.
Yeah, it's a 4K loop, but we do it twice.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, not as good for spectators, but good for us.
Yeah.
You don't have to repeat it.
Yeah, I love running in the woods here.
Yeah. That would always be my favorite. They didn't have the gym that's across the building or across the road. That was a landscaping maintenance building, and there was a lacrosse field out back. And then where the track is, that was just, we played Capture the Flag up there a few times. It was just an open space. So it's changed a little bit.
Yeah.
a lot more parking now than back then,
Sure.
too.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I want to leave this fairly open for you. Any stories that you have from when you were a freshman to when you were a senior here? Any major meets that stand out to you? I know, obviously, you're a record holder, time-wise. But yeah, what are some of your favorite memories from running for Gordon? What kind of workouts did you do as a team?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, actually, running in college was a lot easier workout-wise than what it was in high school. Our coach, we had a great coach, Fred Hammond. He lives in Hamilton. He was a social studies teacher at Beverly High School, and he was our cross-country and track coach. And he was of the old Ryan era, so run as many 400s as you can. So kind of like the book Once a Runner, we would do tons and tons of repeat 400s. We probably had, except for a race day, we probably did repeat 400s almost every day, or something similar to that. Probably my hardest workout in high school, my junior year, he teamed me up with our best 2-miler, sent me out for an 8-mile run, and we were flying. Then we came back, we had to do 12 400s, and we'd always have a minute rest in between. And we averaged 63, and I tried to break 60 on the last one, but I couldn't break it. And then I had about a 1.8-mile walk home. I was dead. It took me forever to get home. I ran into the guy the next year. He was a senior that year, so he graduated. He came back. He said, that was the hardest workout I ever did. I said, yeah, man, you killed me in that 8-miler. He said, yeah. He said, I hated running with you on the track because you just always killed it on the track. So I tried to take everything out of you. So I ran as hard as I could, and you still killed me on the track. I said, you probably should have talked to me. We probably could have worked something out. But I ended up in high school, I get to the point where my legs, I probably had a electrolyte imbalance, probably calcium. But junior year and senior year, it got to where I'd sprint and my legs would just cramp up, lock up, and I'd just be down and out. And what I found out was I trained too hard. When the coach told me to do something, I'd always do it and then add more on, go faster than what he said, or add more on. And back then, because he had some kids that had done that before that were very successful, he always thought that was good. And then when I got up here to Gordon, there were a lot of easy days, a lot easier than what we did. And I made it through the seasons a lot easier. I never cramped up in college at all. Of course, we only had the cross-country season. But it seemed to be a lot easier. The training, we amped up the mileage. We were probably doing between 50 to 70 in high school, and we're usually between 60 to 75 or so in college. Senior year, 84 miles a week was what I got up to. So we did a little bit more mileage, but it was a lot easier as far as the sprints and the repeats. Although I do remember freshman year, we didn't have a track, so to do a track workout, we had to run to Hamilton, Wenham High School. So that was about a 4-mile run over there, and we went at a pretty good pace. And then we got there, and we had to do 4 repeat miles. And my fastest mile in high school was a 4:34, and the first one we ran was a 4:55, and then we brought it down to 4:53, and we ended up the last one was a 4:44, so it wasn't too far away from what I had run for just one single one. And then we had to run the 4 miles back. So I remember that 4 miles taking a long time to get back. But my favorite run in college would have been the run to Singing Beach, that 8-mile run. It just run out there. Sometimes you'd go into the water. Sometimes you'd just turn around, come back. But it was just so nice. Like you said, running through the woods and those back trails were just, I always liked doing that. You felt like you could fly.
Yeah, we do some workouts at Gordon Conwell now because they've got a nice hill. So that's only about 2 miles, maybe a little bit more. And I don't know, I can't imagine doing twice as much as that just to get to your to your workout and then having to come all the way back. That was fun. We actually ran at Gordon Conwell my junior year in high school. They had one of the regional meets was over there, and I remember that hill. That's a good hill there. That'd be a good one to do repeats on. Yeah, so there's actually I was just doing some research to get ready for the podcast. So you're in the Hall of Honor here on the Gordon Athletics website. And
yes.
They say your AKPR is 24:03. If you go to our records page on the cross-country part of the website, you're in the number 1 slot, but it says 24:05. So I don't know if you could give us a definitive answer which one.
Like I said, back then, I was telling you earlier, they didn't really keep good records. All right, so my record was senior year. It was against Southern Massachusetts University, and usually I remember running that race. So we started off, the biggest thing about that race was it was only supposed to be, I think it was Suffolk, one of the schools that we had already seen, and they didn't have anyone good at all. So we had a big invitational on that Saturday, so it was going to be an easy meet. We're just going to run through it. And then I get out there, we're warming up, and I see the van pull up, and it's Southern Massachusetts, and I go, those guys are really good. If I'm going to try to go after this one, I'm not going to be able to run easy. Coach said, don't worry about it. So we start out, and they had 4 in front of me, and I was just behind them. So for the first 2 miles, 3 miles, coming up 4 miles, I picked off one of them, and he yells up to the other ones, watch out, he's coming. And I pick off the second or the third guy, and then getting to the dorms, I picked off the second guy, and he yells up, watch out, he's coming. And I was right behind their first guy, and he ended up running 24:02, and I ran the 24:03. And I was just upset that I hadn't planned for them. And then that Saturday was my worst race in college, besides the NAIA meet. I started the first mile, and when your legs are dead, you just know it. They were toast. There was nothing I could do. So the first mile I went out, there was another guy that was running about the same time, so we were supposed to have a good battle. And after the first mile, I just kept falling further and further back. And one of our guys that ended up running after I graduated, his sister played the bagpipes, so she was there playing the bagpipes to try to help us out, but I couldn't run at all. It was crazy. But yeah, so that was my fastest race, was actually in a meet that I thought I was going to be able to just coast through and not have to work hard, but I wasn't going to let those guys just beat us. So But again, that's usually when you run your best, is when you have somebody really pushing you.
Sure.
You need that competition, and you just gotta have somebody that keeps you going. That was one of the things I actually learned back in high school. At Swampscott, I was running the 800, and I came around, and I was coming down. Swampscott's course track was weird. It was kind of a square, so it had weird corners. So coming around the last turn and sprinting in, their best guy caught up to me, and it was right on my shoulder, and I was dead. There was nothing I could do. But I saw him, and he looks over at me, and I snapped in a perfect form, and he looked at me, and he just said, and he gave up, and he said, whew, and then I just got through. So I realized then that a lot of it is how you look to other people. So in a lot of our races, that's, the form. In high school, our coach was very big on proper form. So my whole sophomore year, I didn't run real well that year, but he kept working on form. And so by the time I got to junior year, my form looked really good. It was a lot more efficient, so I felt a lot better running. And then junior year, I actually learned how to breathe. In one of our races, in one of our workouts, somebody talked about, okay, you just have to breathe deeper, relax your breathing, because usually at the end of a race, I'd just lose my breathing, or at the end of a repeat, I'd lose my breathing because I just pushed way too hard. And then, so I started work on the breathing and controlling it and trying to get, because I read somewhere that in a cross-country race, you're supposed to have 8 steps for one breath. And actually, I found out later that was the marathon. But so I was trying to do that, and I couldn't do 8 steps for one breath. But I was controlling my breathing a lot better. And I was usually 10th or 11th. We ran 10 on varsity, and the 11th would run JV. So whoever ran JV, there's another guy, Steve. Whoever ran JV, because we were first, we would fly. And then we would run varsity the next meet, and we wouldn't run as well. Once I learned how to start breathing, the next race, I went from 10th, 11th up to 6th. And then I just stayed there because I figured out the breathing part. So the breathing and the form, that helped me feel a lot better and look a lot better when I was running. And I think a lot of people thought that I wasn't hurting, but it was hurting. You just had to keep on going and push through to the end. And there was one race in high school where I was in second place. I wasn't supposed to be second. It was an invitational, the 1,000 meters or 1,000 yards back then. And I was kicking in, and the guy caught me right at the end. And I could have beaten him if I knew. So I said, that's when I learned you can't give up till you cross that line. And that's what we try to tell our girls all the time. You got to cross the line. You run through it. So in every workout, we never stop before that. We never allow them to slow down. They always have to run through the line and then be there at the end. Probably going to nationals the first year was kind of cool. We went to NAIA. It was in Wisconsin, La Crosse, Wisconsin. We figured, Wisconsin, it'll be flat. It was a golf course, so it wasn't big hills, but it was always going up or down. So it ended up being a really tough race. Donnie Gibbs, he was a freshman. He actually made it to nationals too. He had finished just behind me up at Orono, and he actually ended up running a little bit ahead of me in that NAIA meet. And there I learned that for me, a lot of times I need to see the course beforehand so that I can see what parts of the course I can run well on, how I can figure out, where I should move, where I should relax, those types of things. Little tricks where you come around a corner, if you push a little bit harder, the kid behind you comes around and you're a lot further ahead of him, and all of a sudden he goes, I can't catch him. And then he's just thinking about the people behind him. So I started learning a lot of little tricks like that as we were running. That year up at Orono, it was the first time we ran up there. Keene State was there. They went 1 through 7. I finished 8th there. But they ended up not going to NAIA. So the two of us were able to make it out to NAIA. The bad thing about running out there was it was our coaches. He had just come over from Gordon Conwell, so he wasn't 25 yet. So when he got out there, he went to rent his car, and he couldn't rent it because he wasn't 25. So we had no way of getting to the hotel and then getting to the course, so we didn't know what we were going to do. Luckily, he had God's always provides. Luckily, he knew a church out there, and he knew the pastor, so he was able to call the pastor, and the pastor came over, picked us up, got us to the hotel, and then we just hooked up with one of the teams, and they got us out there. But the night after we ran, we were eating. He had to go to a coach's meeting. We were eating there, and we had prayed before, the waitress was waiting for us, so we apologized, and she said, oh, no problem, no problem. And then afterwards I said, so, we're here, our coach isn't here. Is there anything to do here? They said, it looks like we're out in the middle of nowhere. She goes, yeah, you're out in the middle of nowhere. And she came back, she said, but I'm a Christian, and my car, I got it because God worked a lot of different things out, so I allow people to use it. So you can use my car, and there's a little coffee house not too far away, a Christian coffee house. So I said, okay. So we go out, we get in the car. Donnie's sitting next to me, and I look at it and go, Donnie, this is a stick shift. I can't drive a stick shift. He goes, come on, how hard can it be? You can drive it. So I go, okay, well, I'll try. So I tried a couple different things, and all of a sudden I lurched forward into the plate glass window, and luckily I was able to take my feet off, and it just stopped. And I said, this is crazy. So I went back in, told the waitress, I'm sorry, I can't drive a stick shift. And the other waitress said, oh, it's not hard. She'll take you out. She'll show you how to do it. I said, all right, let's try this. So I go out. She takes us around the parking lot there 2 times. And she says, okay, go ahead. I'm like, oh, great. And Donnie's like, yeah, go ahead. So we got out there, we met some people, it was really fun. Coming back, I stopped on a hill. It took me forever to get that. I kept stalling out. But we made it there, we made it back. I don't think I ruined her car. So it was just kind of interesting how you run into different people. And so that was way out in Wisconsin, didn't know anybody at all, but she was able to get us to a Christian coffee house, and we met some neat people there, so it was kind of fun. And then the next 2 years, we decided to run, or the next year, we decided to run it's the NCCAA, the National Christian Cross Country Athletic Association Nationals, and that one was at Cedarville. And I was running well that year, and Donnie was running well also, and then Andy McConnell, he was a junior that year. He also qualified, so the 3 of us went out, and there was another guy from Gordon Conwell that was helping us coach too, so he went out too, and he was older, so we could get a car and all that, so we got there fine. In that race there, at Cedarville, they had very short hair, and I had decided after my first race that I wasn't going to cut my hair until the end of the season, so my hair was getting fairly long. So we got lots of looks, and Donnie's hair was fairly long too. So as we walked along, we got lots of different looks from people. But that year I ended up being 8th. I was 7th. The top 7 are automatic All-Americans. I was 7th until about the last half mile, and we battled a little ways, and then he just pulled ahead of me at the end. But they picked 3 American at large, and I was one of the 3 that they picked. So I made All-American that year. And then next year they went to the top 10 were All-American automatically, and then the next 2 ended up being the All-at-Large after that. So 2 years after that, Donnie Gibbs was also an All-American out there. So those were probably, as far as the seasons went, those were some of the best seasons that we had because they didn't have winning seasons very much before us. Let's see, our freshman year it was 9-6.
You were mostly running dual meets at this
Yeah,
time?
we ran a lot of dual meets, and we also had a lot of dual meets. I kept talking to, our first coach was Miles Strodel, so he was the AD athletic director at the time, and I thought Miles was a cool name for a cross-country coach, but he was the AD, and he knew AD better than the coaching part, so that's why Glenn Stone came in and started coaching the next year. So we had a lot of meets on Tuesdays, and then if we had invitationals, those would be on Saturdays. And I kept saying, most colleges are going to just meets on Saturdays. We don't do dual meets. And then after that big invitational that I wanted to do well, but I had run the SMU meet, I told him again, I said, see, this is, when you're running 5 miles, you can't really run all out twice in a week. So are they still doing that, or is it more invitational type?
Yeah, we have one. So it's called Battle of North Shore, and even this year I think we invited Salve Regina, but that past couple of years have just been between us and Endicott.
Okay.
And it was a 5K on both the women's and the men's side, just kind of like a tune-up exhibition meet.
So is that early on in the season then?
Yeah, it's our first meet. Coach Weichert's son Liam actually ran with the guys this year.
How old is he?
On the course with us. I think he's 11, I want to say.
Okay, all right.
He was
nice.
born. So I'm from Delaware, so I'm a big Philly sports fan. I remember he was born the night the Phillies won the World Series.
Oh, okay.
In 08. So
Okay.
yeah, so
nice.
that's a cool story. But
Yeah, cool.
yeah. Yeah, so then
So you don't have dual meets, yeah. Yeah, most colleges don't. Even back then, a lot of colleges weren't going dual meets.
Sure.
They were phasing them out. We're trying to do that actually in high school too, trying to go more. Because it's the same thing. There, it's, again, like you said, it's only 5K, so it's not the 5 miles. And actually, our courses were strange. We had 5-mile courses, 5.4, 5.7, I remember, and then the 6.2. So they varied depending on where we were. And as you know, with cross country, some are flat, some are hilly, so
Sure.
some are a lot quicker, a lot faster. Ours was pretty fast. It started on a downhill, and there wasn't much hills in it, so it was pretty flat, pretty fast. Although senior year, we had an invitation. It was the NCCAA regionals, and also the pop crawl, and yeah, I don't know why we had pop crawl. I guess it was because Barrington couldn't host it that year, because I think it was the next year that they ended up coming up and becoming part of Gordon. But there was one turn as you're going down after Gull. We took a turn around Koi Pond, and there was always a little bit of a dip there, but I never really noticed it because you just stayed on the trail. But we had so much rain the week before that they weren't even sure we'd be able to run the course. They thought it would be underwater. But I remember a kid in front of me from King's College came around the corner and slipped and fell into the hole and disappeared completely. The water actually stopped on top of him, and you couldn't see him at all. And some of my friends had been out there, and they said they pulled out 9 kids out of that pond. They had fallen into it. Normally it was just a little bit of a hole next to the trail, but it filled up with water, so it looked like it was part of the trail.
Yeah, so your 10K record, 33:21, your page here says that was in the 1979 pop crawl. So was the pop crawl a 10K back then, I guess?
Yes. So that would have been senior year. Yeah, so that one must have been, yeah, I don't remember why, because I remember there was like I said, a lot of times we didn't even know how far the courses were beforehand, but, because I think, does it say I came in second in that one?
Just
Doesn't say.
yeah, it just says your record here at the time, but
yeah, I don't even have that written down. Yeah, like I said, I was going through different records and trying to find stuff, and most of our meets weren't covered at all. So
yeah, sure.
just they would tell us what we ran, and they probably lost the papers after that. But I think that was a year. There were a couple good runners. There's Steve Noftel from ENC. There are a couple good King's College runners. So I don't really remember. Yeah, I don't really remember that one.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well, the pop crawl's 8K now for the men.
That's you guys host that now,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the women, I guess my freshman year was a 5K, but I think we decided, if championships is a 6K, we might as well run a 6K, to get used to the distance.
Right.
So the women started running 6K
Yeah.
last year. But yeah, how many teams were showing up to pop crawl back in the day?
There weren't that many. I should have brought all that stuff down. I have it in a little booklet. Because I know ENC was there. We were there. Roger Williams was there. At the time, it was called Berkshire Christian. They had the Heath brothers, which were good, but they usually didn't have a whole team. Barrington, of course, it was their home course. So there must have been a couple others, but there weren't a lot of meets, a lot of teams. I'm pretty sure that there were like 30 runners or so in it, so that's 7 a team. That's not too many. Well, actually, our last guy was 30. I don't know if there were more or not, but yeah, back in the day, like I was telling you earlier, they didn't allow women to run very far. They thought half mile was too far for them. And then my senior year in high school, they finally let them run a 2 mile. They thought that physically It wouldn't be good for their ovaries because there's nothing holding the ovaries up. So if they ran too hard, the ovaries would actually fall down and they wouldn't be able to have kids. So that's what they kept telling people all the time. So because it wasn't until 1980 that they had the marathon in the Olympics, and Joni Benoit won that. And even when I started coaching at Londonderry, so in the 90s, I still had mothers that would come to me and say, now, is it okay for them to run? I heard that it would affect whether they could have kids or not in the future. And I'm like, well, unless they run too much and lose too much body weight, physically it's not going to affect them. It'd just be how much body weight they lose. But that was something that they had told, they believed, one of those old wives' tales they'd believe forever. So 75 was when we first had a cross-country team in high school for women. And then I know we had tried a couple of times in college to get some teams going, but we couldn't get enough interest in it. So it's great. There was, I think it was when my really good team was running. So the early 90s, we went to a meet, and there was a college meet afterwards, and there was a college meet, and Gordon's women were there. So I had to go up and tell them how excited I was that they actually had a women's program at the college now. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, so we actually have Chase Strauss, our marketing director here at Scott Radio, in the studio with us, and he's monitoring some questions that are coming in for you.
Cool.
The first one is just asking about your coaching career in Londonderry, which we'll get to in further detail in a little bit. But the other one's come in so far as we want to know what the funniest moment during a race you had in your running career.
Probably a whole bunch of them. One of them that I remember, it wasn't really that funny for most people, but running on the home course, like I told you, it went out around Koi Pond, and then we did a loop. And coming back around that loop, I must have kicked up a bee's nest, Yellow Jackets, because every single runner after me came in, and they were like, oh, man, I got bit 5 times. I got bit 20 times. As they went further and further back, they get bit more and more. So they're trying to figure out who did it. So they're going, okay, did you get bit? Yeah, did you get bit? So came all the way back to me. Did you get bit? No. Okay, you're the one that kicked it. So I must have been the one that started the whole.
You don't remember
I didn't get
anything?
No. Well, they were ground ones, so I could have run
Okay.
right over it and then stirred them up enough that they came out afterwards. So we sent out the maintenance guys, so at the next race they weren't there anymore. But I said, well, that would have made you run faster. And they said, no, they were in front of us.
Yeah, so tell me about getting started in coaching with Londonderry.
Okay, yeah. When I graduated from college, what I wanted to do was to get a doctorate and come back to Gordon and become a professor, because that's what I saw from my dad. I loved he would have he was in education, so he would have some of the girls come over to the house, and they'd have little parties and stuff, and it was really cool. He got to know him pretty well, and being at Gordon, we'd start off with prayer, with chemistry. Jack Haas would start with a prayer. So it was just cool. So I thought that would be really neat. But I really wanted to coach too. And so I went to SUNY Binghamton for grad school, and I was a teaching assistant. And in one of the classes, kids kept coming up, I need more points. I was like, well, where did I mark it wrong? Oh, you didn't mark it wrong. You just need more points. What do you mean you need more points? Well, I want to get in med school, and if I don't have a high enough GPA, so I need more points. So it was like, well, you don't really care about your learning? No, I just need more points. So I decided that I really wanted to coach, and I wanted to teach kids that wanted to learn. And at Gordon, it would have been different, but I really wanted to coach too. And actually at Gordon, I started coaching at Pingree High School my freshman year. And then they had another coach take the next 2 years. But then senior year, I went back and coached again the indoor team. And we had some really good teams. And that was a lot of fun. Probably the best part of it was I had the fastest girl in the state. She was a missionary's daughter, but she was just very fast. But I really liked the distance runner. We had been training for the whole season. It was the invitational, or it was the last meet of the year, so it was this championship meet. And my little miler, I'd been training her the whole time. I said, just listen to me. I'll tell you what to do. So first lap she comes around, she just stayed. I told her to stay in second place. She was there. Second lap she came around, and she wanted to go. I said, just wait. Third lap she comes around. I go, okay, now go. And she ended up beating the girl by so much. And I was like, that was really cool. She listened to me. She was able to do what I wanted her to do, and she won. That's really cool. And we had 4 kids, and we came in second. in the meet, and I had lost one girl just before. She had sprained her ankle, and she was our relay, so we didn't have a relay. So if we had a relay, then those four, it would have been 5 kids. Those 5 kids would have ended up winning the state championship. So I decided to get back into I decided to go back to high school, so I got an MAT at SUNY, and then I started looking, and Londonderry was the first one that I applied at, and they liked me, and they said, we don't keep things open. If you like the position, then you have to tell us soon because we're just going to keep interviewing. So I told my wife she wanted to live. Her parents were from Worcester, out near Worcester, West Boylston. I was from Beverly, so Londonderry is kind of in between the two. So we decided to take it, and I asked about coaching. They said, oh, can you coach women's soccer? I'm like, I can play soccer a little bit, but I don't know soccer. I said, I do track. And they said, oh, we got so many track coaches, you'll never get to coach. I said, all right, I'll come anyway. And the first year I started running with them, and then the girls' coach asked me to be kind of a not school-paid assistant, so he paid me for that year. And then the year after that, he was a assistant principal, and he wasn't supposed to be coaching unless there wasn't anyone else that wanted to do it, so he decided to give it up to me. So I've been coaching there now for 34 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just teaching you to get to see the kids in one way, but coaching you get to see them every day. Sure. And on Saturday in a whole different way, and it's just really cool. Some of them I still follow on Instagram, and it's really neat seeing some of the different developments and stuff. And you have them for 4 years usually, or a lot of the times. So it's a lot of good and a lot of bad, but you're working with them and developing them. So I really like the coaching part.
You coach the girls team?
Yeah, I'm head coach for girls cross country, and
Okay.
I used to be assistant for winter and spring. Now I'm just spring, because in the winter I'm the head clerk at the meets at UNH for the high school. So it got to be, I'd be out every day until 6:30, and I was gone all day Saturday. So when my kids were really young, some of them I didn't get to see much at all till Sunday. So I decided that if I gave up the coaching, then I could get home earlier each day. And it ended up that a lot of the kids, I still have 2 kids that work with me at the meets. So a lot of most of my kids have gone through the meets as timers and runners, running the scores in and stuff. So that was a way to get more time with them. And I still, for 34 years now, I've been head coach of cross country, and I helped out the first year. And then for off and on spring track, I've been there most of the time, but as assistant. Now I do distance somewhat, but I do the triple jump and the long jump. Coach those also.
Yeah, so ironically enough, another one of our fastest runners, much more recent history, Damon Kilgore, he went to Londonderry.
Yep.
So I know you said you work with the girls mostly.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to train him or work with him as he was running there?
Yeah, I didn't really train him, but I saw him. I mean, we start off every day, and depending on the year, some of the girls are going to run with the guys too. His year is not quite as many. Recently, we've had more of them run with him. But yeah, I knew the family too. His mother actually used to teach. She was a physics teacher at Londonderry too. So I've known them for a long time. But yeah, so I get to interact with him quite a bit. Just he would ask questions and just tell him. And then especially when he decided to go to Gordon, it was like, oh, cool. I know Gordon. So we talked a lot about that too. And I still see him every summer. He's running through when we're down. That we usually meet a couple times a week on the track, and he comes running through. So.
Did you help lead him to Gordon at all, or was that a separate decision?
No. I think he decided that they might have asked me some questions here and there once they narrowed it down that Gordon was going to be one of them. But usually it's more, if they have questions, you can answer them, but you kind of leave them to think of where they want to go. But yeah, I think he's the only runner that I've ever had come from Londonderry down here. We've had quite a few kids come down to Gordon over the years from Londonderry, but I think he was the only runner.
Yeah, so I have another question come in. You were inducted into Gordon Athletics Hall of Honor in 2009. Just describe what that means to you, to be among that group of elite athletes in our school's history.
It was, when I first got the, John Tinman, right? When I first got the the letter from him, like, what? This is crazy. But then he talked with him and the different reasons why and stuff. And then I thought, I mean, it was really cool. It was neat because cross country, as you know, isn't one of those sports that's usually recognized that much. Yeah. Although distance running's coming up a lot more in the last few years. It's you see it on TV now, and as a kid, we would never see it on TV. Yeah. So
with Kipchoge going sub-2 in the marathon now.
Yeah, especially. Right. Yeah. And then Ellie Purrier, the runner from UNH, just broke the women's indoor mile record, and Carissa Schweitzer, she just broke the 3,000, the 3K indoor. So, those are the American records, but they're breaking them. I think Ellie broke it by 4 or 5 seconds, and had 8-second PR, and Carissa broke hers by 7 seconds. And they're only a few seconds, I think it's 2 seconds or 4 seconds and 7 seconds off the world record. So with the women, we're getting back closer to the world elite. Gup ran, what was it, 09, I think, and it seemed like the course was pretty hilly from what most people said, the Olympic trial marathon there. So, we're getting some runners back again. It kind of seemed like you had Prefontaine, and then things kind of dropped off for a while, and now maybe things are coming back around, which is cool to see.
So is there like a ceremony when you get inducted? Like, they invite you back? And
Yeah. It was over at the
Bennett Center, or
yeah, right, yeah. We went in. It was set up really nice. Everybody got to talk. I think we were told to talk for 2 minutes, and I was one of the last ones to go. And I don't think anyone was less than 10 minutes. But it was just cool listening to all the different things. There were some really gifted athletes. It was both Barrington and Gordon that were there, so it was kind of cool listening to all stories and just a lot of the different things that had happened. It was kind of cool too for me because, well, obviously my whole family, my kids, but my parents were able to be there. And Dante Rutzfrom, the kid that I met in 9th grade and then went through high school together, and then he was actually my roommate my senior year for one of the trimesters. He was able to be here and kind of introduce me. They have someone introduce you too, so it was kind of cool because he lives way down in Kentucky, and he came all the way back to do that. So I thought that was really nice of him. And he got an award a couple years after that, alumnus of the year. Just because of all the work that he's done. He's vice president of in the chemical company there. He started out with Eastman, so in that company there, and he's actually had gone over to Hong Kong, using Hong Kong for quite a while. He was in charge of a lot of things over there. So for him to come all the way back and spend the time to do that for me, that meant a lot to me.
Yeah. So flashing back to when you were here at Gordon, what were you studying?
I was in biology.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had Dr. Dent was my professor, and it was kind of cool. He went to the same church I grew up in. He did Boys Brigade, which was kind of like a Christian Boy Scout. So he was my leader back, I think it was when I was 10, 11, and 12. And then it disbanded after that. But then he became my advisor. So I had known him forever. So it was really cool. That was really neat. And then there was Dr. Camp. There was it was cool. A lot of most of the professors I already knew, so you couldn't get away with anything, of course, because we had been going to the staff stuff ever since we were ever since I was in 3rd grade. So that was kind of neat, just knowing everybody.
Did you want to have a career in the sciences at one time?
Yeah. Well, like I told you, I wanted to become a teacher, a professor.
Okay.
That's what I figured I wanted to do, and get into research, do some research. So that's what I did for my master's, but the research was fun. The writing it up wasn't as fun. And then watching the professors trying to get money to keep themselves going, and that seemed like a lot of work. And then at SUNY Binghamton, they weren't able to be quite as close with the students as what I saw at Gordon. But yeah, so the science was going to lead into something in the teaching.
Yeah, so you're a class of 1980.
Yep.
You said you've been at Londonderry for 34 years?
Yeah, this will be my 35th year when I finish this year.
So tell me, kind of fill in that gap, like right after you graduate. So right after you finished up at Gordon, where were you at that point in your life, and what were you up to?
Dr. Dent had said that, I had said, I want to become a professor, so I got to go on get a master's and again get a doctorate to get into most colleges. So looked around in SUNY Binghamton, so I was waiting to hear back from them. I had applied to them in the spring, and I applied a couple different places, but SUNY Binghamton was like the last one I hadn't heard back from. All the others had rejected me, so I was waiting for one more. My parents gave my sister and I the European seminar. So we were over in Europe. I think I was in Italy when I finally got a letter from my dad saying that I got into SUNY. So then I headed out there. My advisor there was actually John Christian, and he was a big guy on endocrinology. He had done a lot of studies on populations and what high density in populations does to like the endocrine system, slows down maturity and all that. So it was kind of cool doing all that research, but doing my thesis and then redoing my thesis over and over again, that was a pain. So I got married, and my wife said, okay, we've been married for a year. We can either have a kid, you can either keep going to school, or we can have a kid. So then you have to get out and look for a job. I said, yeah, I can get out. I can go teach. So that's when I decided to look for high schools.
Yeah, so something I've always wanted to learn a little bit more about the history of the sport. You've obviously been involved with running for a long time. So what are some of the biggest differences you see from when you were training as an athlete here to how you train your teams now as a coach in the different eras?
Yeah, well, like I told you, in high school it was more of the Jim Ryan type. He would do 15 miles a day, but only 5 of it was distance. Everything was on the track, and mostly repeat 400s. So we did lots and lots of repeat 400s. 800s, things like that, but as hard as you could. There was no limit on how fast you could go. After that, when I got into coaching, after the first couple of years, there was a lot of tempo. So trying to figure out a heart monitor to figure out what your resting heart rate was and then how fast you should be running. And what I found personally with most of the tempo was that my girls weren't running fast enough when they're supposed to be running fast to really know what a tempo was. So I always felt that tempo made them go too slow. Other runners, like probably back the way I was in high school, would have been different because I was always running too hard. And I learned that you needed a lot more rest. So in college, we'd have a race day, and that was usually 15 miles because we'd jog the course, run the course, jog the course. And then the next day was usually easy distance, anywhere from 5 to 10, usually somewhere around 8 because we like the singing beach run. And then we usually had one workout, and it was usually half miles, sometimes miles, but something more along that line. And then another easier run, and then usually another race on Saturday. So it seems like nowadays there's a lot more rest than what we ever had in high school. We didn't get, actually for us, our race day was our rest day because we only had 1 or 2 things to do rather than all the different repeats. In the 80s, there was a lot of running. That was the running boom. Everyone wanted to run a marathon. 5Ks were kind of out because they were too small. Most people wanted to run 10Ks or more. But any road race you went to, it was 50 cents to run in a road race, and now it's 35 or more. But 50 cents to run, some were free. But everywhere you went, there were hundreds of people running. That's when they first had to start thinking about limits, like for Boston Marathon and stuff, because they just had way too many people showing up.
Sure.
And they didn't have the chips. So once the gun went off, that was when your time started, and some people didn't get to the starting line for minutes. So their times were way off.
Yeah, you were telling me a story before we came in here. Just kind of maybe retell that, just give folks listening just like how confusing it can get when you don't have the chips and the technology we take for granted today.
Oh, yeah. One of our races when I was coaching, we went over to Salem, and we used to have popsicle sticks. I still have a lot of those that I've saved from different races that I ran in high school and college and after. And so the first kid comes through, you hand out the first popsicle stick, second kid gets a second one. Well, the girl didn't really understand what she was doing, that was supposed to be handing out the popsicle sticks, and wasn't paying good attention, dropped them all, so she just picked them up, and then she starts handing them out. So the first kid got 35, second kid got 10, and the kids are looking at going, what's going on? This isn't right. And the coach couldn't understand what had happened, and she said, oh, well, I just dropped them, picked them up. And she goes, well, they were in order. She goes, oh, I didn't know that. So the coach goes, well, okay, guys, line up in the place that you finished. And so, of course, everyone thought they were first. So that didn't work too well. And to stop the fight that was getting ready to start, the coach just said, okay, it's a practice meet, and we'll just do this again later on. So not too many people were happy that day. But she learned a lesson. And nowadays with the chips, like I said, it doesn't start till you get to the starting line. So your time's going to be a real time. It stops when you get across. All the meets we have indoors now are all automatic timing. Most of our outdoor meets are too. So, you get the cameras there. It's very easy. Before, when we'd have the 50-yard dash, when they come to the end, sometimes they were all right straight across, so you'd have to pick, okay, I think it was this kid, this kid, this kid. But now with the cameras, you can tell. Usually, there's just a few times when it comes out to be a tie, but usually you can tell because they can go down to the thousandths, and we could never do that. So that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess we'll kind of wrap it up with this. Will Lott hosts the Fresh Take, the podcast that comes on right after us.
Wow, it's been an hour already?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't have time
Seems
to
like 30 minutes
fly
at the
by.
most. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So first, Will wants to know if he can have your autograph.
Sure.
But in all seriousness, he wants to know. I know we were just talking about the training, but what kind of training do you prefer? As kind of your mentality when you're coaching? What do you think is the best? And I guess just bouncing off that, what advice would you have to anybody who wants to get started in the sport of running?
As far as getting started, just have fun. Go out, find a nice place where you like to run, and keep it so that it's not work, but it's fun. And then go to different places. I never liked going out and back, but that's the safest way to do it because I've run a lot of 20-milers when I wasn't supposed to be going that far because I got lost when I wasn't coming back. As far as what I like, one of the first things I learned very early on is that girls develop differently than guys. Guys usually every year they get stronger, so they're going to run faster. For girls, though, as they start to develop more, there's years, usually somewhere sophomore or junior year, where they've changed so much physically that they have to work a lot harder to be able to run the same as they did the year before. And for a lot of them, that's real discouraging. So having an assistant coach who went through that, I just tell her, go talk to the other coach, and she'll explain what she went through and how she had to work a lot harder. So for them, they have to, and usually if they work harder, then they get a lot stronger. So it's going through that and understanding that. But I found out that they're very individualistic. For me, I was kind of a masochist. I like to get out there and hurt. Most people don't like to get out there and hurt when they run, but they like to be better. So kind of tapering it. So different types of things. We have a lot of different games that we use that are kind of distance. So I kind of like distance. It kind of got out of vogue for a while that you shouldn't be, that 5 miles was hard distance, so you shouldn't do more than 5 very often. So when that came through, usually teams didn't run quite as well. I still like having some good distance and some good repeats, but enough time for a recovery. I think that was one of the things that I didn't have enough when I was going through, so making sure that there's enough recovery. But for a lot of kids, you're kind of on the edge. What can they do? Just their biomechanics. I had one girl who was our second fastest runner ever yet at Derryfield, which is a tough hilly course. But she couldn't run more than 15 miles a week. So we had to figure out how to do some water training, some other types of training that she could do. And she was usually there half an hour before everyone else doing extra stretches, and then she was there for an hour or more after doing extra stretches too, because that's what she had to do to be able to run. She just, biomechanically, she wasn't made to run. So it's kind of treating them more individual, not saying, one size fits all, but this kid may need, one of the kids we sent to UNH, she needed shorter, faster. When she got to UNH, then they were able to add more distance to her. But she couldn't, the distance wasn't working for her, whereas there's other kids that just need a lot of distance. So it's kind of learning, and that's why I tell them, kind of keep a journal of what you're doing for training, and then what's been working, keep doing that. If some things don't seem to be going well, then start changing. Maybe add a little bit more distance, add a little bit faster repeats, something along that line. But our best team, that's why I wore this shirt tonight, in 1994, so it was 93, it was in the fall, we had one freshman that came on that didn't really understand anything. I like freshmen because you can tell them what to do and they don't really know, so they listen and they do it. We were down at the Vulcan race in Birmingham, Alabama, and we were ranked 6th at the time, and I didn't think we were that good. There were a couple teams behind us, and the number 1 team in the country was there. And I said, okay, well, we'll learn what we're really like. So my top girl, she was going to be in the top 10. She was very good. And then I had another senior that was very good, and then a sophomore and the freshman. And right out of the start, the freshman just went wild. She took off. She was running way too fast. But the guys' coach ran down, and the senior and the sophomore that were there said, "What are you two doing? You're ahead of her in every single workout. Why are you behind her? Get up there right now." And the senior said, well, I thought about stopping and telling him why I couldn't run with her, that she was going too fast. But I knew he'd just get mad at me and yell at me, so I decided I better get up there. So the 2 of them that got up there, we had 3 in the top 10, and the freshman ended up being about 12th. And we ended up beating the number 1 team in the country, which we were on cloud 9 for months after that. And we ended up being ranked for 1 week. We were ranked the number 1 in the country, and then another team beat them by more than we beat them. So then we went down to 2. And then at the end of the season, we ended up being 3rd. We hadn't won New England's that year. My freshman ended up not being able to finish, and I had one girl that was sick. So we ended up not having a good race. But because of how good we were, they still ranked us 3rd for that year. So that was like probably our best year ever. That was fun.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
I've really, it's been an honor to have you on tonight, and I appreciate it. Chase in the tech studio, you want to say something, Chase?
Okay, it's good. Not going off. So I just want to thank you so much, Ed, for stopping by.
Yeah, it's been great.
Someone from Scott Radio, from a director's standpoint, thank you so much. Obviously, we'd love to have you. But honestly, so as an athlete of Gordon, thank you so much, because honestly, like, you're the legacy. Like, you paved the way for this kind of where we are right now. Like, I doubt we would have any sort of traction in terms of the cross country program or the track team without your legacy. So I just wanted to thank you just for everything that you've done just for this program. So.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah. Thank you for making the drive out. I know it's it's not too far, but it's
no, it was fun. It was good.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, me too. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I mentioned briefly while you were outside, we're hosting conference championships this year for track. So
that'd be cool.
I'm sure you're busy with your season. And,
I just have to see where we are, but we have some Saturdays. Not a lot of Saturdays for you, but we have some. So maybe.
Yeah. Well, if you're free, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, you said it was the last Saturday in April.
Last
right?
Saturday in April.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll have to come down to a meet sometime.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening live. Stay tuned right here on Scott Radio. Will Watt coming at you with a fresh take next. So make sure you stick around for that. And we'll see y'all next week. Have a good night, everybody.